I want to touch on what you were saying there, that, you know, there's really two pieces to reversing type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance. The first step is shrink your fat cells. Empty some of the fat out by burning it off. You know, cut the carbohydrates so that you can burn more fat on the body. Don't eat too much fat in the diet because you want to burn more off the body than you're eating. And as soon as you start shrinking those fat cells, that insulin resistance is going to start to improve. While you're doing this, you want to maintain or grow your muscle. And that gives, as you stated, that gives glucose more places to be stored. So that can help, you know, on the other end of the spectrum. So those two things together are really super powerful in reversing insulin resistance. And both, I think, are really important because especially as we get older, you know, it gets harder and harder to build muscle. And so every gram of muscle that you have now is like a down payment on future vitality and, you know, future strength and, you know, balance and mobility and everything that's so important as we get older.
Amen to that.
That being said, you know, let's shift gears to that insulin side of things. And here's where, you know, we differ a bit with a chunk of the keto and carnivore community on this. And, you know, there's a sort of a thought out there, or some people that believe that, you know, the primary driver of everything is the elevated insulin. And so back to like insulin resistance, it's, you know, eating way too many carbs, and that causes this high insulin, and the high insulin sort of locks fat in the fat cells, so you can't burn it. And we look at it as, and the science really proves this, again, going back to the personal fat threshold, that it starts in the fat cells, and the fat cells rejecting insulin that becomes the problem. And insulin itself is just doing, you know, a normal functioning pancreas, so you're not a type 1 diabetic. The insulin is just doing its job in controlling the fuels in the bloodstream. And so I like to break up insulin in kind of two components. There's fasting insulin. So that's the insulin level that you have all day long not after eating food. It's just kind of your basal or your, you know, that baseline insulin level that's there all day. And then there's postprandial. There's spikes of insulin that happen after eating something. And so breaking those two apart, you know, the part of the community that thinks it's all about insulin thinks that as long as you cut those spikes out, everything will be great. You'll just lose weight, and you know, you can eat all the fat you want, and you'll continue to lose weight and that kind of thing. Well, the problem is, you know, we have people, especially when you start talking about personal fat threshold, that are close to their fat threshold, who have very high fasting insulin, like 22, 30. I've seen even higher than that. You know, fasting insulin all day long. So all day long, their insulin levels never go below 30. You know, if you cut their post-meal insulin to zero, basically fast, they eat nothing, they're still at 30 all day long. That's still very high insulin. And yet these people will still lose weight. You know, they'll still, you know, it's not, to me, the more important thing is lowering the fasting insulin levels, not the spikes. Spikes, well, the big problem with the spikes is that it's the low satiety foods, like you described. When you have, you know, sugary drinks or really high carbohydrate foods, what you end up having is that rapid spike. Again, you know, 1 teaspoon is all the blood sugar that your body wants at any given time, and you eat that, you know, flurry or something with, you know, 10 times that, and it's rapidly absorbed because it's just pure sugar. That's a crisis situation for the bloodstream.
Right.
And when that rapid spike in blood glucose gets driven down by a huge spike in insulin, now a rapidly falling blood sugar that probably goes a little too low because the body's not used to correcting, now you're hungry again. And that's why you can drink 1,000-calorie flurry, and then hour or 2 hours later, you're like, I could eat. But, you know, you eat 1,000 calories of eggs, you're not eating again for a day.
Right.
Because it's different. You know, you don't get that blood sugar. So the really big spikes are bad of insulin. But just normal spikes from some vegetables or some protein or these kind of foods, they're not a problem. It's the fasting insulin is a much bigger problem. And how do you bring down fasting insulin? You shrink the fat cells. Because let's go back to the personal fat threshold. You have these fat cells that are stuffed and they're inflamed, and now they're like, I'm rejecting insulin. I'm not storing any more fat in me. Let's say you get a whole bunch of these on your body. Think of back to the pancreas. What's its job? Keep fuels in the blood at a normal level. Like a thermostat. It controls right in this tight range how much fuel is in the blood. Well, the fat cells aren't taking fat anymore, and you're still eating food, so that suddenly your triglycerides in your blood are way up, right? You've got triglycerides of 1,000. Pancreas is like, I got to get these triglycerides down, and at this level, fat cells aren't taking it, so I'm going to go up here. Fat cells are still not taking it. I'm going to go up here. So fasting insulin just keeps going higher and higher and higher as the pancreas is trying to get this fat out of the bloodstream, right? But the fat cells aren't taking it. So the fat accumulates in the liver, it accumulates in the pancreas, around the organs, everywhere you don't want it, because the fat cells are just not taking it anymore. And that's why the fasting insulin will creep up so fast as you get close to that personal fat threshold.